Good morning, everybody. How is everybody doing today? We got a great one for you here. This is we're already going with the three faces lineup here, and it occurred to me, Mark, that I've been just assuming that everybody knows who I am, and that's stupid. And so we're gonna do introductions. How about that?
Not only should we, I'd like to point out this is the first time we've not had a bald white guy on with us in quite a while. It's nice
Isn't
to have
that
somebody with
cool?
hair join us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's just a white. We need to do something about the racial and gender diversity on this program. But
that's
however,
true.
my name is Reverend Stephen D. Martin. I am the host of this show, and it is my job to do some crazy shtick at the beginning and then wrap up at the end, and then get out of the way in the middle because the show today belongs to the Reverend Mark Flynn. Uh, Lead pastor of this auspicious congregation. That's not the right word, is it?
Oh
Yeah.
no, it definitely is auspicious. I would think of many words, but that's top of the heap.
And this
Yeah.
this person with hair next to us is who is this guy?
My name is David Fouche, and I'm one of the auspicious congregants in this in this in this church. So yeah, that's me.
All right. Yeah. Well, this is going to be an interesting show because David has been corresponding with us, I think, and wrote a blog for the website and such, which I commend to you. And it really fits into some really amazing, important Lenten themes, Ash Wednesday, Lent themes, and really goes to what I consider to be the heart of the gospel. Let's just say. This is going to be fun. But I first have to ask. Well, first I have to say a little bit on a personal note, Mark. You're aware of this. David is not, but my dad and a lot of people in this congregation know my father, know my family. My dad has been placed on hospice care. He is in Southern California right now, and I will be traveling out there this evening, and we'll see what happens. And I put the word out to my kids, and Elizabeth decided she couldn't miss the opportunity either, so she's going to be meeting me out there, and that's really special. So
It's wonderful.
yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah,
I'm so glad. Yes. Steve's parents, for those who do not know, Steve's parents were members of this congregation for years and years and years and have many, many ties and links to people who remain here. And we will be praying for your father and all of you as you go through this part of the journey.
yeah. Thanks. Mom and Dad were part of the Aldersgate class and hung out with Neil and Pat Smith all the time, and so many of the lovely, lovely people in the congregation. And Dad, Dad was not a big churchgoer. Dad didn't really hang with it. He never quite understood why we sing hymns, why those are, why that's a thing. He was a big band guy. So when we started First Place, Dad joined in the band, playing his trumpet, and he
Kidding.
and Charlie Satterwhite, who played sax, generally a tenor sax. They would always do that jazz thing where they work out a harmony between the trumpet and the sax, and it was the highlight of my dad's week. So how about
Wow.
that when church can be, for whatever reason, when church can be
Mhm.
the highlight of your week. That's pretty fun, and it really
That's
was.
cool.
Dad loved it.
That's
That's
cool.
so great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
great. I actually saw Neil and Pat Smith. Speaking of Ash Wednesday and Lent, we saw Neil and Pat here yesterday for our Ash Wednesday services, receiving ashes. It was
Beautiful.
really nice.
Mm.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
all generations present.
Yeah, Cat and Ron Gray, John and Nettie Hill. I mean, all the saints of that class for sure. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
we should talk about Nettie Hill as being a saint, but maybe we should. I don't know. Saint with a lowercase s, maybe.
What we all strive to be.
I know, right?
Saint with a
Yeah.
lowercase s. I like
So
that.
that's going on, and I'd appreciate the prayers of the church for the family, and just it's a sad but very sweet time So,
Mhm.
and of
Yeah.
course, the
Well,
service will be taking place at our church. So, yeah,
Steve, my father passed away about 3 years ago,
yeah.
and he was in a home for a while. He suffered from Alzheimer's, so
Mm,
we went down to Huntsville and Coleman, Alabama, to see him as much as we could before he passed. But so I feel you. I feel your pain, and I feel what
thanks.
you're going through. I've been there, and I will say that my dad had he loved music as well. He was a pianist, and he used to play when we were overseas. We'd have services for the Americans in the Seville at the consulate there, and my parents would hold a service in our house, and he would play the piano, and we'd play hymns and all that. And he eventually acquired a Bechstein piano that was bought in Germany, made in Germany, carried by llama back over the Andes Mountains to La Paz.
What?
Yeah, this is a true story. He bought it in Bolivia, shipped it home, and it's now sitting in Seth's office at the church. We donated it to the church when Dad passed. So it's you can go take a look next time you're in town. It's a beautiful, beautiful carved piano, and Seth loves to play it. So
Wow.
yeah, it's kind of a
Wow.
neat story. So there's a
It
musical
is.
connection there as well.
Well, music has been a big part of my life, and definitely been a big part of our family's life. And it occurs to me that we may have to talk to Josh about learning how to play "Lush Life" on the organ. I don't know. That was my theme song growing up. That and "Here's That Rainy Day." I mean, Dad would have a very strong playlist
Mm.
for his service, for his memorial service, and if at the Christmas concert that guy could turn that organ into a theater organ and playing Mele Kalikimaka, then I challenge Josh Sumter to learn how to play "Lush Life." Yeah.
Yeah,
We,
yeah.
we could, that's
I
one I
noticed
don't
that
think we could sing in church, but we could play it,
I
Yeah.
noticed that our attendee list just went up by one. Let's hope that's Josh who just joined us. So he's now
You have been warned.
you've been warned,
You've
Josh.
been put on notice, Josh
Yeah,
Sumter. So, yeah,
Oh
that's
my
my
God.
personal news, and I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share it. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and not to turn this into an obvious segue, but it's fascinating to me how when it comes to matters of love and life and death, and people who are struggling, how intimately we feel that when it's a one person. Here, Steve's sharing about his
Mm.
father, and I so feel that connection and pain, and how difficult that is for us in the modern world to feel the pain and the hardship when we're watching it on CNN in a nation at war. It's so much. There is that disconnect of modern life that allows us to feel. I can feel your pain 100 times more than I can an entire nation's struggle. It becomes very abstract somehow.
I think that's the way it is with just about everything. In my experience, travel is the big equalizer in a lot of ways. When you travel someplace, you establish a connection not only with the place, but if you're lucky enough to meet people and hang out, not have a kind of a sanitized travel experience, but to really meet people and dine with people and so on, you connect with them in a way that they'll never leave you, and it really changes your orientation, makes you rethink a lot of things. I want to say one thing before we go straight into that, and I'm going to really let you take it with David today. But the thing that Meg and I were talking last night about Ash Wednesday, and
Hmm.
about the experience of having ashes, on your head, and we were talking about what the experience for clergy is like, placing those ashes on
Mm.
Hmm.
someone's head, and you're putting ashes on the heads of 5-year-olds, and then you're putting ashes on the heads of 80-year-olds,
Hmm.
and thinking about, and you utter the same words basically, remember that you're mortal, and so on, and it is this reminder of mortality, and how that connects both with the person receiving the ashes, but also the clergy person in different ways at different
Hmm.
ages, and um,
Hmm.
and she was saying, it must be hard to do that. And I said, well, yeah. And I don't think it's ever kind of fun to talk about mortality. It's never something that we just, hey, let's have a drink and talk about mortality tonight. It's not that kind of thing. But there is there is a sweetness to it that is it's very precious and very, very valuable in being that, mediator of God's presence, in which you're placing the ashes both as a human being, as a person who is sharing in this mortality experience, but also as the mediator of God's presence, and saying, yeah, well, this is the way it is, guys. Sorry. To ashes you from ashes you came, and to ashes you shall return. And it's so comforting to me in this stage of my life. It's so powerful. Yeah. Any now that I have soliloquized here, any connections there? Any thoughts?
You named when you started saying how difficult it is to be a pastor in that moment, you named the two key elements for me, which is to watch parents hold children up to you and put ashes on children's heads. So that you're watching the parent hold the child, and that awareness of, my child is mortal. From dust you came, to dust you shall return. Repent, believe the good news. The how it takes your breath away in that moment to watch that, and gives you the exactly the word you said. It's a precious appreciation of life. And it's the opposite end of the spectrum. I hate to say it, guys like you, okay, how many more we got in the line? Okay, I'm ready to go. It's the 90-year-old that has been sick. It's their 95-year-old who, this is probably their last time being here. And you put the ashes on their head, and you're basically saying, and it, and they're looking right at you. Yeah. And it's a very intimate face-to-face experience. Those are the precious ones that really moved me. Really moved me.
So you're feeling a call to ministry now, Dave, right? You're wanting to join in this humanity. No, never mind. I'm going to let you guys take it. I'm going to get out of here. It's past my time, and I'm going to monitor. Mark, what are we doing for we got to talk about for those of you who are joining us first time, Mark is often in kind of over his head on these interviews and runs out of things to talk about or ask about. And he asked me to come in and clean up, basically. But we have a bit of a game, and that it is usually that he has to work.
Christopher Nolan.
We have to work in the title of a Christopher Nolan directed film into conversation, and then I have to be sharp enough to pick up on it. And at that point, when Mark utters the name of, let's say, The Dark Knight, the Batman movie, or Memento, or Inception, or something like
Insomnia is one.
Oh, see, that's not even one that I know about.
That's what I'm counting on. I love that.
Then when he says that, then you'll either see Mark look down as if he's texting while he's talking, because that's what he's doing. He's texting me and saying, "Hey, wake up, Martin," or you'll see me pop on and start talking. So here we go. This is off, and remember, this is a live. Judy, I'm really glad to see you're on today. This is a live presentation, and it is participatory. If you have something to comment on, please do put it in the chat, and we'll pop it up on the screen, and we'll answer your questions or get to your points if we can. So here we go. Yeah.
Excellent. I really meant it earlier when I said that intimacy we feel with watching a friend who says, my parent is struggling and in a difficult place, and how hard it is in the modern world when we see events happening around the world right now in Ukraine, to stay connected. That's why I was really moved. David sent Steve and I his thoughts on a blog, and one of the first statements you made in that email that you sent was about the danger of hating Russians, and I thought that's so wonderfully summed up the dilemma of being a Christian right now. Can you talk a little bit about what was driving your thoughts as you?
Well, there's this whole background here. I've done a lot of work well, I lived overseas growing up, in Spain and Bolivia, and my dad was a State Department official, so you know, uh,
Hmm.
anyway, so we have this I have this background of knowing people overseas, and recently, well, last 30 years of my career, I have worked with people all over the world. So when I worked at Bentley Systems 25 years ago, we had a big client in Japan. So I was out in Japan a lot, and I was all over Norway, Sweden. I never got to Russia. I wanted to, but never did. But I was in a lot of countries and met a lot of people. Side note, I was at dinner one time in Copenhagen, and we had German, Swede, Brits. I mean, there was all kinds of nationalities from Europe there. And this German guy says, the problem with you Americans is you think we Europeans are all the same. And I was like, yeah. I said, do you realize what you just said? You put all Americans in the same bucket. And he kind of flinched a little bit. And I said, there's people in Maine who don't understand people in Louisiana, even though they're both talking English, right? I said, you can't put us in the same bucket either. Like, we are the United States. And anyway, that's a side note. But it occurred to me that when you're meeting somebody face to face, things are different. Things are different.
Yes.
And in the last, I don't know, few months, I've had the pleasure of working. Well, in my previous job several years ago, I worked with some people in Ukraine. So we had a third party development group that was out of Ukraine. And didn't think anything of it, barely knew the country, and we worked with them. They were phenomenal people to work with. They still work with my old company. And recently I've had a chance to kind of connect with some of them again. And last fall, I connected briefly with some folks, some developers who were Russian, and they're based in Moscow. And one of them actually left Russia and moved to Mexico because he didn't want to live there anymore because of the political situation. This was a few months ago. And I've kept up with him on
Wow.
LinkedIn. And I have a flag that I usually, it's an American flag right now, and I could turn my camera, but I hung my Ukraine flag
Mm.
in sort of honor of these people. Well, this guy is Russian, and I'm like, you're in Mexico, and everybody sees what's going on. I can't imagine. And then I see all of these links on these things on LinkedIn. People are like, I'm Russian and I'm against this war. I'm Russian and I'm against this war. And I'm thinking,
Yep.
McCarthyism could set in so easily in this country where you just turn, oh, you're from Russia.
That's
And
right.
then I was jogging down by the lake, and I'm running along, and I always hear other languages. So I'm jogging along, and some people are walking by, and I'm like, that sounds like Russian. And I could feel it. Ooh. I was like, oh, that's so dangerous. That's why I use it is so dangerous to go down that path because the government has decided to do something. So that's where this is kind of coming from. It's a long story, but that's where this is coming from, Mark.
Not long at all. I think it perfectly summarizes our struggle because I mean we know. Look at our country. That anything that our government does, is it like the entire nation goes, "Oh boy, yay, we're excited." No, I mean we see that in our own lives. We see it in our own churches and denominations. Why Russians support Putin's war? We would never think that about anything happening in a community that we're engaged in here. And just it's very encouraging to me to see these news reports about there are people who are in Russia being now, standing up in protest all over
Yep.
the nation. They're protesting just like you
Oh,
would be
there's thousands, and
protesting.
there are thousands, and we all know this, but there's thousands of Russians who've been detained and put in prison over this, because they're protesting the war. Um,
Hmm.
but there's a danger here that it can, C.S. Lewis, I love the Screw Tape Letters, and he talks about how, you go to church and he tells Wormwood to tempt this guy, tempt your client, he calls him, I think. He says,
Hmm.
tempt your guy by
Yep.
making him notice the people next to him and sort of going, oh, you know, um, he's wearing this or she's singing off key or whatever, which means we immediately put them in this category and we judge them because they're singing off key. Okay, but they're singing, right? They're singing because they love God.
Right.
Who cares if you think God may be tone deaf for all we know. I don't, and I do it too. I do it every Sunday, and I don't mean to, and I try to fight it, but I do it too. Is this quick judgment call? And right now, it's just easy to blast all Russians. So we just have to watch out for that very, very carefully. Anyway, Another point you made, the connection when you see somebody face to face, and Steve has got these issues going on with his father right now, and you talk to somebody, you feel their pain. It's interesting to me that social media has done something to this war that we've never seen before, because not only is the whole world galvanized around this issue, we're seeing personal reports through Facebook and live feeds and Instagram and all these things. People, there's a guy who I think was on Dancing with the Stars or something. My Lauren, my wife, was telling me, I forget, and he's Ukrainian. He's there, and he's kind of a celebrity, and he's posting, video of dead bodies and things, and and posting people crying. We're getting like everybody becomes a news reporter suddenly. Imagine if we had had that during the
Yep.
Civil War. Imagine if you had had
Yeah.
Facebook during the Civil War, like all of these kids dying for their country, and you'd had little live coverage of it. I think then all of a sudden it becomes, you start agonizing because it's much more right in your face, just as you were saying, Mark. So
And maybe that's the hope for all that I trash social media, and I do, and I have no problem
yeah,
trashing so much of that kind of
me
bad
too. Yeah,
interconnection where we become
yeah,
trolls for toward one another's lives.
yeah,
Uh, Perhaps this is the saving grace of social media. It allows common folk to say, "This is my life," because of decisions that are being made.
yeah.
It's harder to group all Russians into one category when you have Russians on Facebook saying, "This is not something I believe in." When you see Ukrainians saying, "This is what," when you're watching CNN and those bombs are dropping, "This is
Right.
what's happening in my neighborhood."
Yeah.
Um, Maybe that's the saving grace. Is it humanizes what could be a very abstract concept for us.
You know, it's true. So, and to bring it home to a less volatile degree, but imagine being a Democrat in Tennessee, or a Republican in Delaware or whatever.
Mhm.
You've got a blue state. You're like, oh, well, I'm Republican. Oh, but you're from Delaware. No, I'm Republican or whatever it is. No, I'm Democrat. Oh, but you're from Tennessee. No, but I'm a Democrat. There's this common, oh, you're from Tennessee. Therefore, we just put you in this massive bucket. But if you meet
Yep.
me face to face, you'll realize that I'm kind of neither Democrat or Republican, and my views over here are this way, and over here they're that way, and it's never quite that cut and dry or black and white. So it's the same thing.
Oh,
It's the
it's
same
so
concept.
that feels so. I cannot tell you how accurately you are portraying the struggle. We have no problem generalizing other people, but as soon as someone generalizes us, how wounded we feel. Uh,
Exactly.
I, I am married to a woman who grew up in upstate New York and lived in Maine,
Mm,
and people in the South think it's humorous to say, "Oh, you're a Yankee," or
yeah.
"You're a damn Yankee," or "You're," and people say
Or a
that as if it's
carpetbagger.
a right. I mean, and they go, "Ha ha 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 ha." How brutal that experience is for
Mhm.
someone who is trying to just build relationship and connection here. When I go north, it's, "Oh, say something, talk. We want to hear your accent." Okay. How about that? Um, I was
Yeah.
talking to someone,
No, go ahead. Keep going.
I was gonna say, I was talking to someone this week and they were struggling with they were raised in a home that was anti-Semitic.
Mm,
And the awareness of, I am anti-Semitic. I don't want to be, but it is something that it has been trained into me, and how to rip that out of my life, to rip it out of my head. It's not just a matter of, "Oh, well, I'll choose not to be anti-Semitic now." It's so deeply ingrained in us that desire to, out of fear of the other, fear of the unknown, to generalize and
mhm.
isolate and degrade somebody by labeling them that way.
You know, that's another label is younger generations, older generation. So, some people would have said that someone with, well, they were actually quite liberal given upbringing where he came from. Um, you know, and I would
Mhm.
say to young people, like my daughter who's 18, and she may impose certain of the current standards against me. And I'm like, well, I grew up this way. I'm sorry. I can try to change, but be careful of judging me because someday you will be the older generation and some younger generation is going to judge you. Like my 18-year-old daughter is going to be 50 someday, and some young 18-year-old is going to judge her for how she's acting because it's not the current norm. And that's another label that we get put into, and I think erroneously. So if I can
I think for my
throw
for
out one
my
other.
my generation, I will tell you one thing that I'm struggling with. It's gender identity. When people say, "Oh,
Mhm,
my name is Max and my pronouns are they them," I completely support that. I completely want to go.
right.
But talk about hard to train myself to not say he him or she her or all that. And my what you exactly were saying, my daughter looks and says, "Oh my God, what is wrong with you? Why can you not get this down? It's not that hard." It's that training and having to be open
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
rewiring my brain. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And there's going to be, yeah, no, your daughter at some point, she's going to be your age, and her generation, her kid
Hmm.
is going to be trying to retrain her, and it's going to be difficult for her. It's going to be something else that we didn't, um, and it's tough. It's really tough to try to keep up because you get judged based on that. Um, I don't want to segue too much, but I want to get back to this idea of the dangers of hating Russians, because where that really came from
Yes.
was my awareness. But predating that, I would like to express it. We posted it on the church newsletter, but I'd like to just talk about that experience real quick. Um,
Hmm.
Last Thursday morning, so a week ago, was when the Russians invaded Ukraine. And that morning, I had scheduled a meeting with our Ukrainian team members. And so here I am going into this meeting, and it's at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm watching CNN on
Mm.
one screen, and they're sitting there, and they're all with their live webcams on. We're talking. We can. We were like, well, first of all, why are you here? Second, is a bomb going to come behind your screen any minute? And I mean, what is? But they
Yeah.
just conducted this business like nothing. And I thought, this is crazy. How can I have a
Yeah.
business meeting with live video feed from Ukraine? And it was all, I mean, there was no lag time whatsoever. You could, their mouths would move and you could hear them. And we just had this conversation. We connected. It was just like, it was crazy. And yet
Mm.
this war is going on behind the scenes. So I thought, it just hit me that
Wow.
these people are about the bravest people in the world. Like, I don't even understand how that, I wouldn't be doing that if
Yeah.
Virginia were
No,
invading
that's what
Tennessee
I was
right now.
thinking.
you know,
Yeah.
I
I'm
mean,
right
I
there
wouldn't
with
be
you.
doing a Zoom call. Yeah, it was just really, so anyway.
One of the other phrases you wrote in that original email I saw was how, and this seemed, see, I even hate to say this because it seems so obvious, and yet this is the struggle of humanity and certainly the struggle of the Christian church. Your quote was, "We should treat each other as humans," or something like that. And just that difficulty of seeing the humanity in the other person instead of that, then that's the danger of that label, whether it's Russian or
Yeah.
Ukrainian or whatever, to see the humanity in other people. I heard this week on the radio somebody talking about they had a sandwich board mentality, meaning you remember the old sandwich boards in the old days. People
Mhm.
used to wear big boards on their front and back to advertise messages. He
Yep.
said,
Yep.
I wish we had every single person we met had a sandwich board on that had a listing of all they were going through right now and their fears and their
Wow.
struggles. Because and
Wow.
that you would and people could see yours, because then we
Yep.
would immediately see uh, the woundedness and the struggle, and we'd have so much more empathy if we were able to recognize that struggle in the other person, their humanity. And I thought, oh, I love that image. I love that image.
I love the image too. I'm going to play the negatives that if you saw somebody's bored, a lot of people would just start using it to make fun of them. Or to put them down or to feel better about themselves. I see that you're struggling with this. Well, I'm not. Look at me. I'm strong. I don't. I think some people would go that path and it would be difficult. But yeah, just to simply recognize that somebody's going through something. Um, I wrote this blog a long time ago about categories and how you shouldn't put kids in a category. Oh, my
Hmm.
child is this, is the dad, this is that, this is the, we do this all the time. He's the smart one. He likes math. She does this,
Yeah.
whatever. She loves volleyball or whatever. Maybe she does, but she may not like it tomorrow. My daughter was all into horses for a long time. She still is, but not really, not nearly as much. And kids
Right.
change. Adam was an Eagle Scout before he ever entered before he ever entered Scouts, basically. He could do everything the other Scouts did, but eventually he lost interest in Scouting completely. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So people change, and they change day to day. So even what you see of me today, I had some good news this morning that totally changed my mood. Yesterday, I was in a pretty bad funk. Today, I'm excited. I'm lively. And we have to remember that even though I know Mark Flynn, or I know whoever, if I see them today, they may be a different person, and that's okay. That see that humanity even in the people we know. So, and I see that with children too. My kids come in, I can tell immediately. Or my wife, she knows immediately if I'm in a funk. She's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Sure, I don't want to tell you. I don't want to expose that to everybody. I don't want to tell everybody. I don't want you to know that I'm upset, but I really am." And so it's good to be aware of that.
It goes back to
Absolutely.
that. See, I wanna throw back the lob this back to you, the sandwich board idea. If somebody
Yeah.
came up and said, "Oh, I'm gonna make fun of you, what you're struggling with," of course, what that would mean is on their board it would say, "I'm so insecure, I have to make fun of other people's problems."
That's true.
You know,
That is true.
it would
Yeah,
immediately be
yeah,
there. I am completely
yeah.
insecure about my manhood or my my whatever, my intelligence, that I have to make fun of people. Oh, well, when we think about the Russian situation and what we're
Yeah.
going through, last week Steve and I talked a lot about doing exactly what you are doing, which is connecting with your Russian friends, connecting with Ukrainian friends, and just saying, "I'm here for you. I
Yeah.
want to support you." Um, in your encounters with those Ukrainian business associates, did they pass on anything that you think is of value for those of us, how they can be supported, what we could do other than just maintain those connections?
Ah, yes. And to me, it's like if somebody dies, nobody wants to say anything or talk to them
Mm.
because you're afraid. Like, let's say, somebody but I'll keep talking. Um, Something bad happens to somebody. Mark, are you?
Dave, you're just going in and out. If you can hear me, so Dave's going to reboot. Uh, One of the struggles and we mentioned this last week, is knowing what to do uh, as friends. When I became an editor for a piece he's writing about, is to discuss how that rhythm of writing is also part of the rhythm of Christian life in Lent. Hello, Steve. I can't hear you.
Hey, sorry about the technical disruptions. Let's just keep on as we can. All right. Hopefully, David will be back.
As you were over that conversation, what are we watching? What's the connecting point that we also need to bring up, Steve?
Sorry, say that.
You were hearing our conversation about the dangers of curious what where your mind were hearing that conversation. What was the piece that we were leaving out?
The dangers of the connect or the benefits of the connection, because that's where I always seem to go. Yeah. Yeah, I'm experiencing some computer problems here right now, and hopefully they'll be out of here shortly. So let's just hang with it for just a second. No,
Okay.
this is really critical because I think that I think that this really goes to we really talked about this last week. This really goes to the core, the essence of a Christian story. This really goes, and it's this whole thing of, we're kind of trained, I think, throughout our lives to feel like life is an us against them. I always attribute that I learned everything that I know about intertribal conflict. I learned all of that at pep rally in High between Robertsville and Jefferson. Okay, you still there? I'm hoping you are. Yep. Okay. So,
Yep,
here's
here.
the thing. I just remember. I remember that at the time, going in 7th grade, I was a new kid that just started junior high, and I remember that that one of the things we did, we had a pep rally for the Robertsville Jefferson game. It was awesome, big pep rally, and I remember sitting there as we met, we did our thing, and the cheerleaders are going, and hey, beat the Jefferson Eagles. And I remember thinking, why are they bad? Why does it stink? Why do we want to beat them? Because I know some of those people. I grew up on that end of town for a little while, and I grew up right across the street from Jefferson Middle School now. Why? So I remember thinking those thoughts, and I still kind of wonder, in this team kind of spirit mentality that we have. I wonder how much of it really is are sports the solution to the problem, or they help create the problem? I guess is my ongoing question, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's because we don't train one another up to be work really hard. Schools to be intellectually, electronically, technologically mature, but we never focus anything on emotional maturity and what to do with one another. And we certainly don't do a very good job in the church teaching people to be spiritually mature.
I'm not only talking to pundit, but to try to figure out what's going on here. God, my computer is completely frozen.
I was going to say, you're still cutting in and out. That's for sure. It's bad. I'm so sorry. I was enjoying that conversation with Dave. I did want to point out the reason Dave and I have gotten to be close over the last year is I've been editing a piece of work he's doing, a novel he's writing, and he'll give me 2 or 3 chapters at a time, and I'll edit it. And a great creative, imaginative mind he has to be one of his editors.
Well, David is about back on, but my computer is struggling. So let's just keep as they say in show business, stretch. Let's do it. Let's keep going.
Did you grow up? Let me ask you, did you grow up saying?
I'm sorry, did I grow
up? Hey guys,
what?
Can you see or hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yep, we're having some difficulties, as you can tell. We're trying to hang on for dear life here. So Steve's computer is bogged down and overloaded.
Well, I'm here, and I can see you guys again. So I don't know if you can see or hear me fine.
Oh goodness. Okay, I've got one thing I'm going to.
I can hear you fine. I can hear you. So
there's a real lag, and I don't know what's causing it.
I wanted to ask you, David.
Yeah.
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 I was going to ask you, for getting to know your writing style a little bit, being years on something you're writing. I know that you have mentioned that you do a much better job in writing, like most writers do, into a rhythm of writing every day and reflecting on the material and getting that kind of, we were talking about Lent earlier. You think of the connection between that daily experience of writing and the rhythm of that and the daily experience of having a devotion or a time, something that keeps you connected. In those two things?
So I hope you hear me and this comes through fine. Um, but Mark, I think that's like anything in life. Cook every day. And if you do it at a similar time, that can often help. Running, and of course, I like to run. And if I don't run regularly, I do lose it. You've got to run regularly. You've got to pray every day or regularly. You've got to get fresh air in life. Our bodies are suited to this daily cycle. And I think also I listened to this podcast, Hidden Brain, a lot. It's on NPR. You guys may be familiar with it, but they have this. There was one where they talked about deep work and the need for people to completely disconnect for hours at a time, to whether it's to do whatever your real job is, so to speak. So you turn off your phone, listen to music or whatever, but you get into a focus zone and you don't worry about any of these constant chitter chatter things. Somebody texted me, somebody did this, or the news or whatever it is. Everything goes away and you just focus on that thing. And I think that's a really good message for everybody days, because we are so not just glued to the TV perhaps, but we're glued to our phones. We're glued to the tick tick, oh, somebody texted me, I better respond to that now. The immediacy of all of that. And I think, so for me, like a lot of my writing, it happens when I run, because all those things are gone. And if I go run for half an hour, it takes about 10 minutes. And then my brain is finally like in the mode. And then all these ideas start flowing and I start hearing things or seeing things or imagining things, that could be in the book or in the devotional that I'm writing or whatever else. So I think that's the daily thing, but also that disconnected is really important. So that's a long answer, but that's, I'm sure when you're writing a sermon, if you're trying to do texts, while you're writing a sermon, I'm sure you have to disconnect and focus, my guess. But
No, I think you're hitting it exactly. And I guess I'm trying to figure out what the connection is between that conversation, which I agree with you completely, and how to keep the awareness of the humanity of the Ukrainian-Russian situation in our heads. That there's got to be something that the CNN experience and news cycle experience is the distraction. And how do we, maybe it's as simple as praying for the people. I'm a big believer in when you pray for someone, it changes how you think of them. It changes something in your brain about them. To move away from the television and the website that's reporting just news and move into a more devotional, reflective thought on what this represents, humanity destroying other humanity, things like that. That's a difficult place.
I mean, yeah, and maybe to me, I think prayer is good, and I think taking action is good. And I say these things, but I don't do them. I feel like I hear Paul in the back of my head. I want to do it, but I don't do it. I don't do what I want to do. He's got this great convoluted. You could give me the exact scripture, but he's got this great passage where he's like, what I want to do, I don't do, but what I do, I don't want to do. And it almost sounds Dr. Seussish to me, but I love it because that's me. But I know that, like, if I get on LinkedIn and I just make one post that says, hey, I support Russians, or Facebook, or just maybe you take one action. Maybe somebody who's Russian and you just call them and say, I want you to know I love you. I'm on your side. I see your humanity. I don't know what your politics are. I don't really care. Just want you to know that I care about you. Like, think about how you would feel if somebody said that to you. I know you're going through a tough time or whatever. I know this is difficult. I just want you to know that I'm here. That's it. And before I lost the connection here, I think of somebody who there's a somebody who may have lost a loved one, like a husband or wife or something, and that person, everybody kind of puts on these gloves and is very careful around them and even quiet. Should we talk to her? Should we say something? I
Hmm.
don't want to upset her. I don't want to bring it up again. I don't want to like keep reminding her that her husband died or something. We don't want to do that. And yet that may be exactly what she needs, is for
Yeah.
somebody to say, I recognize your pain. That's it. Not saying anymore. I just want you to know I recognize your pain. And
Yeah.
maybe, or hi, just want to say hi. You know, I just want to say hi. So it's,
I
and I
so
think,
fall into that trap. I fall into that
yeah,
trap. I have a terrible habit of going, "Well, I don't want to bring it up. It'll just remind them." As if that
yeah,
woman who lost her husband isn't aware that she lost her husband. It's such
right.
a mind game. And it's really more, if I'm honest, more about my own discomfort,
Yeah,
knowing I can't fix it. And
yeah,
to be brave in this moment means to acknowledge my own discomfort, even as I say, I want you to know I'm very aware and my thoughts and prayers are
yeah.
with you.
Let me bring something to the table here. I've just finished up my Stephen ministry training. Pretty
Mm,
excited about it. And one of the things they teach you is that you are the caregiver, but God is the cure giver. You're not responsible for fixing the pain. You're just
right.
responsible for providing care. So, if you think of a nurse in a hospital, she's not going to cure you, or he's not going to cure you, but they're going to take care of you so that your body can heal. And in the same way, if you go into it saying, you know what, this person's hurting, I'm just going to be the caregiver. You don't have to be a Stephen minister to do
Hmm.
this. Obviously, you just go in and say, you know what, I'm going to give you a present or a card or talk to you or whatever. These things are, and I think with the whole Russian and the danger of hating Russians right now, it's the same thing. If you find somebody who's Russian online, Facebook, whatever, and you just reach out to them, then you've made a connection, you've made it human, you've taken action, and you're just saying I care. You're not trying to solve the problem at all, of course. So that's something to think about, I
That
guess.
that I want to encourage everyone who is watching this to know, if you do need to talk to someone, Stephen Ministry is this wonderful, wonderful ministry in our congregation where you just have a confidential friend who it's just between the two of you. And I really want to celebrate our Stephen ministers. We're graduating a new class, commissioning a new class here
Hmm.
very, very soon. But that's an intimate part of what you learn in seminary too, the ministry of presence. Um, to be present, you represent something greater than yourself. Whether you're a Stephen
Yeah,
minister, if you're a pastor, if you're a Christian, you're representing an entire community by just being with that person
yeah,
and saying, you're not alone. We're sorry that you're hurting, and we want you to know that we're going to be with you on this journey,
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's their journey. It's their journey.
And it's tough to do that sometimes. The easiest thing to say is we'll pray for that person. And then we pray, say,
Hmm.
God, give them relief. In my head, I often hear God saying, how do you want me to do that? You're sitting right there,
Yeah.
David. You could go over to their house, knock on their door, and give them relief. Like, we expect God to have like this magic Harry Potter wand and go, "Phoom, there's relief. But what I think God, again, I don't do this. I'm not living up to my words. I know that as much as I should, but that's what God wants us to do, is to get out there and take action, whether it's post on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, and reach out to somebody and say, I know you're Russian and I don't hate you, that,
Right.
I think it's important that we do that.
One of my favorite biblical passages along that line is Exodus chapter 2, when it's Moses at the burning bush, and it's this Moses, God shows up and says, I have heard my people cry and I know what they're going through. So I'm sending you.
Right.
And,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and you can just hear Moses going, wait a second.
Wait a
But
second.
that's how God, that's how God
Yeah.
does. God says, I'm going to act. And I act by sending you
Yeah.
to go
Yes.
represent the community, the
Yes.
covenant, me, because you carry that ability to make a difference in that person's life.
I'm looking at the comments here, and Judy says presence really does matter. No words are needed. Um, that is so, so true. You don't have to
Hmm.
necessarily speak any words. You could just show up. Just show up. Um, and just say hi. I mean, or whatever you need to say, but you don't even have to touch on the subject. The fact that you're there is, I think but you've taken that action and you've stepped
Yeah.
out and said, I'm gonna be present with you. Yeah. So,
That was one of the hardest lessons I ever learned in seminary. I did what is called CPE, clinical pastoral education, which meant for me, I was a chaplain at Duke University Hospital, and I was terrified of being present in a room with someone who was hurting. And so what I learned in the hard
wow.
way is every time I'd walk into a room when there were people who were grieving or mourning, or someone whose father just had this horrible accident, I would immediately do whatever I could to get the hell out of that room. I would say, you know what? You look like you need some water. I'll be right back. I'll go get water. And I'd come in and I'd say, we probably need. I'll be back. I'm gonna go get something. It was just brutal because the
Or
thought of standing there or
yeah,
sitting with them and being quiet. It took me so long to get to the point of really
yeah,
believing that me being present offers something.
yeah. Yeah, I could see that. And I could see if you walked into a room and they already had 3 or 4 family members, oh, I won't disturb you right now. I'll come back.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I can totally see that. We all kind of do that. It looks like she's got enough visitors. We don't need to, let's not drive by her house. We'll go back another time. And you never know. You never know what that God may be sending you because that person needed to see you in that moment. You're right. Maybe no words are needed. You just showed up and you smiled or whatever. Your face was there. And as a pastor, or even really a stranger, somebody you expect your family to gather around you, but when somebody else comes in,
Hmm.
it's like, oh, that's a little different. That's okay. That's
Yes.
nice. That was nice that
Yeah.
person stopped by and said hello. So
And by the way, the gift you need to offer someone is just saying honestly out loud. It's not
yeah,
show, and this is such the negative, the bad example. I'm here, I brought you a casserole. I'm not staying. Bye. I'm practically running to the car. It's
yeah,
okay. I promise you, it's
yeah,
okay to say, I'm nervous about bothering you. I'd be
yeah,
happy to come in and stay, and I'm happy to go. Whatever you need right now.
yeah,
And that
yeah,
gives that person the opportunity to say, thank you, that's so kind. I just need to be alone right now. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here. Can you come in and just sit with me for a while? Just
yeah,
saying it out loud, trusting that that person's going to say, okay, this is what I need,
yeah.
is a great skill set. That doesn't come
It
easily for many of us.
and it's trusting that person will actually say what they truly feel. We need the signboard. So
That's
we need a
right.
signboard that she's saying, "Oh yeah, come in," and the signboard says, "Please leave me alone." I get people do that. We don't want to hurt somebody's feelings so bad that we want to. Oh, come on in. Come on in and sit down, and I'll endure this visit, even though I really was just want to go bawl my eyes out in the back room. Like I feel like it'd be great if people could just say, you know what? I'm not worried about hurting your feelings because I know they won't be hurt. I really just need to be alone. Thank you for the food. Goodbye.
That's
People
right.
need to be able to be more straight. All of us do.
One of the gifts you give, by the way, for other people when you're the wounded one, when you're the one grieving, one of the gifts you give is finding words for that person and to say,
Mm,
I've had early in my ministry so many gracious people who had just lost loved ones who could see, I don't know what I am doing. I feel
yeah,
lost. I want to be your pastor so badly, but I got nothing. And to have these
yeah,
gracious people say, I know this is hard. I know it's okay that you're just with me. Can you
mm,
just sit here and
yeah,
and I'm going to wash the dishes and just have somebody in the house? Yes, I can. I mean, so it's one of the things I've
yeah,
tried to hold on to when I'm the wounded one, to speak aloud the words that are unspoken for that person who has a good heart but is incredibly uncomfortable. That is a real gift that we can give in our woundedness.
I think it's. I mean, it's perfect. Those words are exactly right, Mark. And I think you have to. Yeah, because it could be that you just got to wash the dishes. Maybe just sit with them. Judy says, I can
Yep,
attest to what it means to have a presence sitting next to you in time of trouble that you can do nothing about. That's great. It's exactly right. Sometimes you may just need somebody to sit in the room. My This is a little different, but my mother used to work in the basement of our house. She worked from home back in the 80s, go figure. But she was a writer, and she would write for the State Department, the Foreign Service Journal, and other magazines and stuff. And sometimes I'd just go down in the room and just sit there and do my homework, and we didn't talk at all. But it was comfort having her being in the same room
Mm-hmm.
together. And I remember in college, there was a young woman I knew who said she had a roommate, of course, and she goes, sometimes you just want a roommate to ignore. You just want somebody in the room that you can ignore, but that presence is there, and it's comforting to have that person there. So
Yeah. Humanity just needs to be reminded sometimes. I mean, that's one of the 5 things of survival, food, water, shelter, fire, and community. We need to know we're not
yeah,
alone.
yeah,
And to just have somebody present. That's why a lot of us, when we get sad or depressed, we want to go and just hang out in a public space, to be around other people.
yeah,
You don't have to know
yeah.
anybody, just be reminded this is what it means to be alive.
It's very true. It's very true. And I think the Zoom and Teams and all of well, what we're doing right here, Mark. I even offered to drive over to the church to do this with you, and but decided to stay home instead because I had a meeting running right up to this. But even this, and there's people watching and chatting. This is
Mm-hmm.
community, and given the COVID situation, this has helped a lot of people, of course. And we used to have happy hours like this. It was kind of weird. We'd have Zoom,
Yes.
and I'd have a beer in hand, and he'd have a beer in hand because we couldn't be physically together. So we'd be talking through Teams, and they're all over the country, but for at least it wasn't the same, but it was nice. It was kind of neat to have that kind of community. So that it's kind of neat that the digital age has given us that a little bit. And when I meet with our Ukrainian team, I mean, I feel like we're in the same room, and there's that sense of community. We're a team together,
Yes.
um, you know. And I asked them once, after the first meeting, I said, "Look, I don't know what to say," and I did that. I said, "Look, I don't know what to say here. You guys, I don't know how to address what's going on in your country and what's going literally in your backyard. I don't know what to say to you. So I'm telling you right now, I don't know what to say. And should
Mm-hmm.
I?" And I told the sort of project manager I'm working with, "Is it okay if I say something at the beginning of the meeting, or should I hold off?" She goes, "Anything that comes from your heart, we welcome." Is what she said. "Anything that comes from your
Perfect.
heart, that's what we need right now," she said. So I kicked off the meeting and I said, "Look, I just want you to know we're all on your side. We're here. We care about you. We're watching this closely. I won't take up the whole meeting, of course. Let's get to business, but we honor your professionalism and your real bravery at coming to the table and doing professional work while this is going on. So I want you to know that that's how we feel." And they were all very appreciative. And then we did business for the next
Yeah.
2 hours. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Just saying that much, I don't know what to say. I don't, that's good. So
So, friends,
Yeah.
we're at the end of our time. And
wow.
those of you who are, still with us, I apologize. I'll tell you what happened. Are you ready for this? Okay. Because all this has to run through
I'm
my
curious.
computer. I had Photoshop open on my computer, David. You know this kind of stuff. And it crashed. It crashed. And
Yeah.
in doing so, took everything else out
Yeah.
temporarily. It completely loaded
Were
out my
Wow.
you were
machine.
you
So
were you using Photoshop to try to give yourself hair or something, or what was the
I
purpose for that?
often do that. I spend hours trying to do that, but this time, no, it just did it all by itself.
Just
I
crashed,
want to just I want to go back to this because Mark, we talked about this last week, and you asked me, hey, what's a Christian response to the crisis in Ukraine? And I said, gosh, I really hadn't thought about this because I've always been thinking about this from another angle. It's like I've always thought about this from what's a Christian response when our tribe, when our nation is is
Mm-hmm.
struggling against another country, and how do we deal with that? And I really hadn't thought so much about that, and we talked through it. I mean, we really did talk through it in this kind of conversation, and that's where the genesis of the little meme that I sent around, that we sent around in social media last week. It's like now's a good time for us to check in with our Ukrainian and Russian friends because
Mm-hmm.
that to me is what enemy love That's what I think that's what Jesus intended us to do when he talks about loving your enemies. We make that so hard. So this, may I just for a second, just a quick little exegesis of that passage from the Sermon on the Mount. We get hung up in so many places in that text. Love your enemies, and we get so hung up in so many places, and a lot of it has to do with the fact we don't read the whole thing. We don't read the whole text. We take little pieces out of it and take them out of context and go, "Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that. I can't love my enemies." That passage ends with, "Be therefore perfect as God is perfect." And I'm like, I can't be perfect. What in the world? What in the world?
Right.
How can I be perfect like God is perfect? Well, the context is all there. It's all there. First of all, love your enemies because that's what God does. God sends rain upon the just and the unjust. So therefore you are to do the same. And that's when it's not this out of context, be perfect as God is perfect. It's really be perfect the way God is perfect. And God is perfect because God shows compassion to those who are ungrateful and unrighteous. And that's the whole we make it so much harder than it really is. But that's, I think, the essence of it. And so in a setting like this, reach out to your Ukrainian friends, show love to those who are suffering, but also recognize the humanity of the other side, because in God's eyes there are no other sides, right? And I think that's what's really, really important about this conversation.
Yeah. If I can throw out, you guys know I have a bunch of kids. If any one of them went astray and became a criminal, much less a murderer, like an Adolf Hitler or a Putin, what would I do? Right? Would I still love him or her?
Right.
Of course I would. And that's what God feels for Adolf Hitler and Putin and whoever else. But it's hard for us, but I can tell you that my other 5 kids would love that child, would love their sibling, even through this terrible, whatever was going on.
Right.
And that's hard for us to recognize. And because it's easier just to put people in a bucket again. Murderer.
Yep.
Evil.
Well, and I would modify that a little bit. I don't really know how God feels about Adolf Hitler, but I do know that God that we responded to Hitler by killing Germans in war, and in what most people would consider, myself included, as a righteous war. But God doesn't do that. God didn't do that. God does not kill the German people because they have an awful leader, and that leader kind of, systemically forces them into doing what they're doing. And that, I think, is the key, if I may.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me say, I want to thank David for showing up and having this conversation. I appreciate his writing. For those of you who are part of our congregation, you know that David's one of our Wednesday church-wide devotional writers. He writes blogs. He writes an occasional newsletter article for us, and I appreciate him offering himself in this context as well. So thank you very much for being with us.
It's just really a joy and an honor to be here, and it just anything I can do to serve and help, we'll try.
Well, if you just said that, and I have a proposal for you that you've done so well at this, David, that I think I'll be talking to you about, kind of covering this when I can't be present. Maybe you could be you could be the Jay Leno to my Johnny Carson.
Love it. I love it.
Thanks everyone for being a part of this discussion, and thanks so much for hanging with us through my Photoshop crash situation that really was disruptive, and thanks for the unpleasant light that puts you in, Mark, when you're trying to just keep it all going. Thanks a bunch, man.
What was the movie reference? I never heard the movie reference. Anyway,
I
we'll
didn't
let it
give
go.
him one. I did not get
Oh,
one. I was trying to play Lush Life. I thought that'd be a good closing song.
That's not the same Lush Life. Come on. That's Johnny Mercer, man. Look it up. Johnny Mercer. Talk to you later, guys.
Bye.